Hey everyone, welcome back. Let's dive into something super important today, setting healthy boundaries. And get this, we're pulling insights from a blog post, of all places, on LeStallion.com.
LeStallion, they're all about journals, right?
Exactly, they make journals. So their blog post, 50 journal prompts for those trying to set healthy boundaries, caught my eye immediately. Honestly, connecting boundaries with journaling. Genius. What do you think? Have you ever considered, like, journaling to figure out your boundaries?
It's a really interesting approach. You know, a lot of times people think setting boundaries about shutting people out, but this blog post really emphasizes that it's about self-discovery and respect, figuring out what you need, and then, this is key, being able to communicate that effectively.
And they get into it right away, how essential boundaries are for our mental and emotional well-being. Like, remember that time you were swamped at work because you said yes too much? Boundaries could have helped with that, don't you think? So you're not so overwhelmed.
Yeah, for sure. And the blog post makes it clear it's not about just saying no all the time, which can feel, I don't know, kind of harsh. It's more nuanced than that.
They actually compare setting boundaries to drawing a map. Love that visual.
Right. Because it's not about boxing yourself in. It's more like creating this framework for healthy relationships, interactions, all of that. Having that map to guide you.
So think about your own life for a second. What would your map look like? What are those non-negotiables for you? Those are the boundaries worth exploring.
Right. 100%. And that's where the whole journaling aspect comes into play, right? The blog post suggests that writing can really help you unpack all of that, what matters most to you.
Like you're holding yourself accountable, in a way, to your own needs
Yeah.
and desires. Because sometimes just thinking about it, it's not enough. But when you put it down on paper, clarity.
Yeah, totally. And they talk about this idea of triggers, things that make you feel uncomfortable or situations, behaviors that just push your buttons.
We all have them.
Of course.
Yeah.
But when you journal about them, you start to see the patterns. Maybe it's a certain phrase or type of request that always sets you off. Recognizing those triggers can help you set much more effective boundaries going forward.
So it's about understanding, like, what makes you tick, or maybe what makes you ticked off, so you can handle things better in the future. And that's where those 50 journal prompts come in, right? From the blog post. They give you this, like, structured way to think about all the different sides of setting boundaries.
And they're not just like, what did I do today kind of prompts. These really make you think. Like, there's one, it asks you about a time someone overstepped your boundaries.
Yeah.
Think back to that time.
Yeah. How did it make you feel, Did you react in a way that surprised you? It can be really eye-opening to look back on those situations.
Totally. And thinking about it that way, it can help you figure out how you want to handle similar situations in the future, I mean.
Right, exactly. You're learning from what you've been through to, like, empower yourself moving forward. And it doesn't stop there. There's another prompt. It asks how your upbringing, like your family, might have influenced your views on boundaries, personal space, and all that.
Oh, that's an interesting one, because it gets at all those unspoken rules we get from our families,
Yeah.
Did your family talk about boundaries openly? Were they respected? It makes you think about why you set boundaries the way you do now.
It's true, like connecting the dots between your past and present. And speaking of connections, the blog post, it talks about how the boundaries we have, they might need to be different depending on the relationship.
Exactly. I mean, think about it. The boundaries you have with a close friend, way different from the boundaries you have with, say, a coworker, right, or someone in your family. With a friend, maybe you share more personal things, but at work, you keep it professional.
Oh, and romantic relationships. Don't even get me started.
Yeah.
That's a whole other level of boundaries. The blog post has prompts specifically for those.
Yeah, romantic relationships can be tough because there's already this, like, expectation of being close, being vulnerable. But what the blog post stresses is that setting boundaries, it's not about creating distance in those relationships. It's about building a foundation of respect, understanding, all of that, mutual respect.
It's like saying, hey, I love you, but I also need these things to feel safe, to feel respected.
Exactly. And that's such an important message, no matter who it is. But it goes beyond those external boundaries we have with other people. The blog post even talks about setting boundaries with ourselves.
Ooh, now that's where it gets really interesting, I think, because it's one thing to say no to an extra project or a last-minute dinner, but setting boundaries with ourselves, that's a whole other challenge.
Totally. It's often the hardest part. But the blog post dives right in, asking these really thought-provoking questions. It asks about the habits we have that might be working against us.
Like that thing where we overcommit even when we're already swamped. We've all been there, am I right?
Absolutely. Or that voice in your head that's like, you're not good enough, or you're not smart enough, or whatever it is. Those negative thoughts we have about ourselves, those can be the toughest boundaries to break down.
It's true, we can be so hard on ourselves. But that's something the blog post really highlights, how journaling can help us see those internal barriers and then start to break them down.
It's true. And it's about like approaching those thoughts and patterns with a sense of curiosity instead of judgment. So instead of just accepting those negative beliefs, you ask yourself, wait, where did this even come from? Is this even true, really? Is this actually helping me in any way?
Yeah. It's like you're holding up a mirror to those beliefs that are holding you back. And just by seeing them clearly, they often lose their power, don't you think?
Totally. And that connects back to what we were saying about the whole idea of self-respect. It all ties together. The more we're aware of our needs and honoring them by setting those boundaries, the more self-respect we build. And that affects everything, our relationships, our work, all of it. It's like this ripple effect.
I love that. And it's a journey, right? The blog post makes that clear. It's not like you set your boundaries and you're done. It's this ongoing process, self-discovery and adjusting as you go.
Exactly. What works for you right now might be different a year from now or even a week from now. And that's okay. Life is constantly changing, and we change too, right? The key is to just keep checking in with yourself, asking yourself those tough questions, and refining your boundaries as you grow.
And that's where journaling comes in. Again, it gives you that space, that dedicated time to really have that conversation with yourself, to think about your experiences and make adjustments as you go.
And remember, those 50 journal prompts from the blog post, they're a starting point. Don't feel like you have to use them all, but they're there as a guide. So if there's an area of your life where boundaries are tough for you, go back to those prompts. See which ones really speak to you.
It's about figuring out what works for you, creating a life that feels true to you, aligned with what you value and what you need. As we wrap up, there's one last question from the blog post that really stuck with me. It asks, how has setting boundaries actually made your relationships better?
Oh, that's a good one. Because it can be easy to focus on the discomfort of setting boundaries, but honestly, it often leads to stronger relationships in the end. More fulfilling, more authentic, all of that.
Because when you can show up as your true self, with those healthy boundaries in place, you can really connect with people on a deeper level. It's about that mutual respect and understanding. Having the freedom to be who you are without apology. And that's something we can all strive for in our relationships, right? So if you're curious about this whole journaling thing and using it to explore boundaries, I definitely recommend checking out that blog post on LeStallion.com. They have all 50 prompts there. Who knows, it might even inspire you to start your own journaling practice. Until next time, everyone, keep exploring those boundaries and embrace the journey. It's worth it.